I have the Enduro 3 and the Garmin Fenix 8 51mm AMOLED. I've been hiking with them, testing them out, and here's what I found out. The obvious difference between these two watches is the battery life. Using the Fenix 8 51mm, I recharge it about once a week with activity and a long hike. The Enduro 3, I recharge about every 3 or 4 weeks. Now, a big part of that is the screen, and another big part of that is the solar panel that's on the Enduro 3. I think you should think about it as something that offsets your battery usage as opposed to tops up your battery. You're not going to probably go to 100% with this just from the solar panel, although I have just left it out on a tree stump in the sun in smartwatch mode, and it has charged it. It has had a positive charge afterwards. But practically walking around every day wearing this, it's going in and out of the sunlight. The sunlight going into it varies dramatically, and the results will be mixed. If you're hiking in bright sunny conditions above the tree line, it's going to be good. If you're in a tree tunnel and cloudy skies, whatever it might be, it's going to be negligible. But because this is such an efficient watch, it still doesn't burn that much battery. So overall, if battery is your main concern, Enduro 3 is the easy winner here. Screen's another big difference between the Fenix 8 51 AMOLED and the Enduro 3, again, both 51mm. If you look at the specs, you could see that the AMOLED screen on the Fenix 8 definitely is better, spec-wise. And if I look at things like the maps and everything, the maps definitely look much better on the Fenix 8. But that said, the maps are acceptable on the Enduro. There might be a question as to whether you actually need all of this detail on a small map like this, because for me, I use the maps on my watch as like a glanceable confirmation. I'm not doing any hardcore panning around, looking for things, navigating on the watch. That I will do on a GPS unit or my phone. But on the Fenix 8, you should get a little more context to your location there. People either love the MIP or they don't love it so much. I can tell you that I wore this MIP screen since the Fenix 3, so a long, long time ago, all the way up until the Epix, the new Epix version, when I went to AMOLED. And since going to AMOLED, I find it hard to go back to MIP unless I just get rid of the AMOLED and I get used to the MIP after a few days. But when I have these on side by side, testing them, my eyes always go to the AMOLED. I think it's just a little bit easier to see. Enduro 3 is really good if you are in direct sunlight. If you're in direct sunlight, it'll reflect that into your eye. Sometimes you have to adjust your wrist a little bit so that the reflection kind of hits your eye perfectly. And if you don't have that level of light, there's a backlight that kicks in and lights the screen up. You can have that backlight come on when you ungesture, so when you move your wrist, when you press a button, or even do it after sunset. I think if you are coming from the MIP screen already, the Enduro 3 is going to be definitely like an upgrade from that. It's definitely sharper, crisper than the previous MIP screens, and I think you'll be really happy with it. If you're coming from an AMOLED watch, like an Apple Watch or something, maybe an Epix Pro, it might be a little bit tough to go to the Enduro 3, but you'll get used to it. But I think overall, if you you just want the better screen, the Fenix 8 is definitely the winner here. Here's one you might not have thought about: comfort. The Enduro 3 is a little bit lighter than the Fenix 851, but it feels much lighter. Almost, maybe not half as light, but it definitely feels lighter, more balanced, better on my wrist than the Fenix 8 does, which feels pretty big. Now, a big part of that, I think, is the fact that it has this ultra-fit nylon band. It's a band, closes with Velcro, very comfortable, dries very quickly, and it definitely beats the kind of rubber normal band that comes with the Fenix 8. I actually bought the band that came with the Enduro and put it on my Fenix 8, and my Fenix 8 feels much better. I've tried cheapy Amazon bands on my Fenix 8, and they always stretch out. This Garmin one, it's more expensive, but I think it's worth the money because it's held its shape so far and has been really good. Comfort-wise, Enduro 3. If you do get the Fenix 8, opt in for that extra band, and I think you'll like it a lot better. The Enduro 3 just focuses on the things that Garmin does really well and does them really well. It's got a incredible battery life. It tracks your health, your fitness, does activity tracking. It has maps and navigation on board. Not much else, but that's okay because that's why I get a Garmin. I want those things and I want it to be done well. The Fenix 8, Garmin went into the sort of smartwatch territory, even though I want to call it a smartwatch. They added a speaker and microphone on here so you can take calls, you can make calls. That works okay. Nothing, it may be convenient if your phone's in your pack, but nothing I use all the time. You can also remote control your phone. So I have an iPhone.
What's
I can
the weather
Siri
tomorrow?
To do things through my watch. Kind of handy again when my phone's buried away. It's also got a dive computer on here, which I've never used and probably won't. But if those things are important to you, then the Fenix 8 might be a better option. But the Enduro 3 is a few $100 less than the Fenix 8 because it doesn't have those features and has the different screen, and it just focuses on what Garmin does well. And I think that's probably a smarter strategy for a Garmin watch. The Fenix 8 had some high-profile bugs, including the Joe Rogan cold water plunge bug. I had problems with my Fenix 8 in the beginning. It would restart, do different things. But I would say now, at this point, which is maybe almost a year later, the Fenix 8 is relatively stable. The thing with Garmin lately is that they'll release a firmware update and then it'll break something else, or it'll make the battery drain or do something. A lot less of that on the Enduro than the Fenix 8, but I'd say these are both in pretty good places now. I wouldn't worry so much about the bugs as long as when you get either watch, just update the firmware right away and go from that point. And also check the support forums. I'll put a link to the support forums underneath this video. That's another important step before you get one of these, because things change. I think if you want just Garmin doing Garmin at its best for the outdoors, it's the Enduro 3 hands down. If you are coming from maybe an Apple Watch or an Epix and you look at the screen on the Enduro 3 and you're like, I can't deal with that screen. You are looking at these watches, hundreds of times a day. You want something a little bit better. The AMOLED screen is definitely nice on the Fenix 8. And if you want the connected features like the speaker and microphone or the dive computer, the Fenix 8 is an obvious winner here. But if you don't care about that stuff and you think you could get used to the MIP screen on the Enduro 3, it's a few $100 less than the Fenix 8. Also worth checking out if you want something not as expensive as a Fenix 8 is a Forerunner 970. I have not tested this, but on looking at the spec sheet and looking at what people are saying, people like that one a lot as well. Again, check the support forums because there have been problems with these. If you don't care about maps at all and you just want like a rugged watch for the outdoors that has solar and long battery life, Instinct 3 Solar is a decent one to check out. That's what I got. If you've used either one of these and you have strong feelings either way, leave a comment beneath. I'm sure it'll be helpful for folks. I know people struggle with the question, Enduro 3 or Fenix 8. All right, guys, stay safe. Thank you, everyone on Patreon, and I will see you out on the trails.